Hello everyone, we are back with lesson 4 part 2, and this time on other patterns of inheritance in our series on introduction to genetics. This time we are looking specifically at multiple alleles and polygenic traits. So sometimes, again, we said things just don't follow a Mendelian pattern or simple dominance. So sometimes it can be confusing because there's a lot more things at play than just a dominant allele and a recessive allele. In the case of multiple alleles, we say something has multiple alleles if there are more than 2 versions of that gene. And a great example of this is rabbit coat color. And the interesting thing about rabbit coat color is that with it, there is actually, in fact, a bit of a hierarchy of dominance where you have what we would call a full color rabbit up here. It actually has a truly dominant allele that is dominant to all others. But then you have the chinchilla color rabbit right here that has a gene that codes for the chinchilla coat that is not dominant to the full color gene, but it is dominant over the Himalayan and the albino genes. So let's take a look at this hierarchy very quickly, and let's look at the genotypes that would contribute to these things. So a full color rabbit could have 2 capital letters. Again, the capital C codes for full color. And so you could have a capital letter along with any other. That's a line over to denote a lowercase c and ch for chinchilla. Now you could also have a capital C with a lowercase c and an H. The H denotes Himalayan. That's the Himalayan allele. Or finally, you could have a capital C and just a plain lowercase c, which would be the albino gene. Any of these 4 will produce a full color rabbit. But what about chinchilla and Himalayan and albino? How do we get these things? Well, the chinchilla rabbit must have obviously a chinchilla allele, but then it can actually have any of the other three alleles. It just can't have a dominant allele. So it can have 2 chinchilla alleles. It could have a chinchilla allele and a Himalayan allele. It could have a chinchilla allele and an albino allele. It will still be chinchilla colored because the chinchilla allele is dominant to the other 2 but recessive to the full color. All right. What about Himalayan? Well, Himalayan would follow a very similar pattern to what is happening here. It'd have to have a Himalayan allele. So it could have 2 Himalayan alleles, or it could have a Himalayan allele and an albino allele. Now, albino, the only way to get albino is to have 2 albino alleles. And so we see this hierarchy here with these multiple alleles. Let me write it out for you like this. Capital C is dominant to all others. Chinchilla is dominant to the Himalayan, which is dominant to the albino. And so here with multiple alleles, we see that there is a hierarchy and you get a wide range of different rabbit colors. Now, like with many other traits, there are a number of environmental factors and chemical factors that can come into play here that determine the exact coat color and the exact nature of the expression of the coat color. But in general, you have these kind of 4 categories based on the multiple alleles here. Now, another example of multiple alleles is human blood type. And again, we're going to do a bonus video on that because so many people are very interested in blood type. So moving right along, though, to keep this video pretty brief, another example of a non-Mendelian pattern of inheritance that we need to look at is what are known as polygenic traits. So instead of having multiple alleles for one gene, one trait, this is a trait that is controlled by many genes. And so what you're going to find is that lots and lots of human traits are controlled by multiple genes. So, excuse me, let me switch colors here. So multiple genes control one trait. All right, and so a great example of that is human eye color, human height. This is why, you know, this guy right here ended up so much taller than, I'm assuming, what is his not so happy younger brother. So I am the oldest boy in my family, and 2 of my 3 brothers ended up being taller than me. And that is because it is a polygenic trait, and so you get a wide range. This is what makes it possible for us to have people who are very short, people who are very tall, and every height in between. It's what makes all the different eye colors possible. It's what makes, even more than what is pictured here, skin tones possible, because you can have very light, and in fact lighter than her, and even very dark, even darker than her. And so because there are so many different genes that play a role in the traits. Now, an interesting kind of side effect of this, the fact that multiple genes and each allele gets to have a little bit of say in what's going on with a polygenic trait, an interesting side effect of that is such a wide range of phenotypes that are possible. So let's look for just a second here at polygenic traits. This is a cross right here of 2 individuals who are completely heterozygous if skin color were controlled by only 3 genes. Now, in reality, it's probably several more than that, but let's just pretend for a moment there's only 3 genes and we have 2 individuals who are both heterozygous. Now, they would have this kind of medium skin tone here represented by all these 3s, but between the 2 of them, they could have children. It would be possible in this mix for them to have children who were the lightest and got no dominant alleles, or have a child who was the darkest, who got nothing but dominant alleles. But what you will see with most polygenic traits is that they fit really nicely on this bell curve, where you get an average in the middle range, and you get the least over here at the extremes. Okay, and so this is true of most polygenic traits. That's why you have what we talk about average height for men and women. And so most of the human traits that you tend to think of when you start thinking about genetics, hair color, eye color, height, skin tone, a lot of those things that we're interested in, those end up being polygenic traits. And so they're far more complex than what we really dig deep into in a high school biology class. But I hope this kind of helps explain a little bit of what's going on there and help you understand a little bit more of the why behind that. And so this has been lesson 4, part 2 of other patterns of inheritance in our Intro to Biology series. And so I hope it's been helpful to you to help you understand a little bit more about multiple alleles and polygenic traits. As always, I encourage you to like my videos, comment on them, subscribe to my channel, check out the full playlist in this series, Intro to Genetics, so you can hopefully begin to understand genetics better at a high school biology level.